after, just as we were going live. Hello. I've
Hello,
just got a message. Just got a message from my passport people saying my passport's been approved and is on its way back to me.
Yeah, you going on holiday?
No, I needed it for my photo ID because I don't have a driver's license or anything. So I need some photo ID to open a new bank account.
I need to keep an eye on mine because I need to refresh it. But I need to go to the lovely passport office because I use it for work so frequently. I probably will not be able to wait for it. I'd have to go and stand in the lovely passport office and talk to them and prove I'm English. I don't really know how it happens. I've never done it. Take a nice new photo, and then I think it's like 2 weeks, 4 weeks. They send you a new one.
Nice.
That'll be my joys next Christmas. Maybe.
How are we doing? How are you feeling?
I'm tired. But I did spend today putting up the Christmas tree at work because my manager came in, one of the directors came in, and she was like, "Well, I've got the Christmas tree in the back of my car," and I was like, "Okay." And she finishes earlier than me because she's got kids. So I said, "Oh, when are we putting the Christmas tree up?" And she said, "Oh, well, not today." And I was like, "I'm gonna do it." Spent an hour I was really busy putting the Christmas tree up and paper clipping tinsel to dividers and blue tacky knit to screens. So when she walks in tomorrow, she'll be like, "What the heck?" And I'm like, "Mum, I did it."
So today is the last live show of 2023.
What? I still can't believe it's December at the end of this week.
I know. Hello. But we ended the book. We didn't end the book. We ended the year reading A Study in Drowning.
We did, and it's a standalone, which I love because there's nothing else to read. There's no cliffhangers.
You feel accomplished afterwards. I mean, you feel accomplished after finishing a normal book, but when you're like, oh, you know that you've got to read the rest of the series, you're like, well, I've finished a book, but I've got 2 more to go, whatever. But with this, you're like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally done. I can move
I know
on.
the whole thing.
But what did you rate it?
4 stars.
Yeah. I rated it 5 stars.
I did see on Goodreads. I did see when I finished it. I was like, right, let me go and see if Lisa's rated it because this was before you told me that you'd finished already. And I was like, right, and then I saw that you'd rated it 5 stars, and I was like, it's good, but it's not 5 stars. But I can see why Lisa would think it was 5 stars for her rating system. So okay. And then I felt better about my 4 stars because I was like, well, is it a 4? Is it a 3?
The thing is, like, the first ever read I read was Juniper and Thorn, and it was for the podcast, and it was a recommendation from Meg because I've taken a lot of recommendations from Meg recently. She's not let me down. So we read it, and it's not the kind of prose I'm used to, and like I think Meg called it purple prose. So it's kind of like it's not simple, but it's not like lyrical and flowery, but it's just very, very atmospheric and gothic, and just there's a vibe when you read, and that's what I got from the first one. And I was curious to find out if that's just Ava's style of writing. So when I went into the second book, and immediately it was like dark academia kind of vibes, like a gothic, you know, the gothic kind of vibe. I really I dived straight into it. But trigger warnings for people who don't know. Check trigger warnings before going into this.
Yeah.
Just the same with Juniper and Thorn. I think Ava is the kind of writer that will put things in books in general that are triggering, because in Juniper and Thorn there was a lot as well.
Yeah, I did spend the whole book going, are you actually going to tell us what happened or not?
For me, I think it's kind of like for the reader to put in what they think happened before it's revealed, sort of thing.
Yeah, but and I do get that, and I understand why, and because it is classed as a YA, so I understand as well why a lot of it is veiled and it's not like
Yeah.
laid out exactly what happens. But when we got to the point of which she explained what happened, I was a bit like, right, well, who found out what? Like, what were you doing? Because the point of which my brain went was someone walked into her on the desk or in this green chair that they keep referring to, and stuff happening. But when she gets to the point towards the end with
Yeah.
Preston, sorry, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but what do you
Right.
expect? With Preston, and he's like, "Oh well, I heard about the girl in the architecture college, and I didn't really want to believe it was you. And so what happened?" And she's like, "Well, not every." And I was like, "What?" And
So
then she
yeah,
carried on, and I was like, "Right, okay, yeah, right." Like, what?
I think, I mean, to be fair, for it being a YA, it is quite dark. I
Mm,
think. And so again, like obviously for anyone who doesn't know if you're watching this back, it is spoilery. All our lives are spoilery. Um,
and
so
chaotic.
I understand why they couldn't go into like detail about what happened, and she
Yeah,
hasn't
no,
described what happens.
yeah,
I think it would have had a bigger impact had she have done that, because I've read things in the past
mhm,
that are adult books. It's a different genre, but it was like Colin Hoover. It ends with us. The
mm.
the things in there is like explicitly explained,
I don't
um,
think it needed
and
to
it
be
kind of
explicitly explained. It was more the fact that the author chose to go down the route of not, I don't know how to put, because obviously all of it is traumatic, all of it is awful, none
yeah
of it should have ever happened. But instead of going down the route of rape, like the whole shebang, it was, we did other stuff, but we didn't sleep together. And I was like, right, what?
I think it's
I don't
I
know.
think
Like,
the whole
I
point
was,
was that it was without her. Well, he was in a position of power, wasn't he? And it wasn't.
yes,
It was without consent, but obviously it's easy to forget how young these people are as well in these books. Like they
yeah,
are
I agree.
so, and but it's like he still did that without consent and used his
Yeah,
power to like force himself on a kind of thing.
yeah. But I was just,
Um,
it was more, I think the shock was not necessarily me downplaying it thinking, "Oh, well, you haven't been through anything." That's not what I meant at all. But it's
uh,
more the fact that I was like, "Right, but this man is in a position of power, and you talk about the comments he made and how she's pretty and how she makes men like not able to control themselves, which is
yeah,
absolute
that was
rubbish,
creepy.
by the way."
That was so creepy.
But I was just surprised. More, yeah, I say it was more so I was surprised that the person in power, unless it is more, no, because like if you're going to force yourself on anyone, you're not going to care about piety and purity, really,
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things. It was more the fact that I was like, well, what? I'm surprised that, or was it more that he got caught before he could go further? If that makes,
yeah,
like, that was
yeah. I
more.
get what you mean.
Because it's more the fact that I was like, right, well, this person's in a place of power. You obviously, understandably, in his mind, was going along with it. So why didn't he take more advantage? You know?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. So it was in my mind, I did think that he'd actually
Yeah.
gone all the way and
So did
find
I,
out
until she
that
explained, like, oh,
yes, it wasn't. It is difficult to words. It was still shocking what he did. Like he still took
yeah,
advantage of a position of power that he was in,
hmm,
but and how she feels she's right and how she feels, but in my mind, but maybe it's just because maybe it's just like it's an us thing. Like the expectation is we've
maybe,
seen so many of those types of things, we've
yeah,
read so many of those types of things, that we automatically go straight to the fact that he's actually gone all the way and like fully raped her.
yeah. Well, maybe
But
it's as well because I'm now older, and I don't read a lot of YA anymore.
mm,
So obviously the topics that we read about in adult are a lot more black and white, a lot more, I don't know, descriptive, I suppose.
Yeah.
A lot more shocking, really.
Yeah.
Maybe I was, but going back to the beginning. What were your what were your thoughts going into the start of the book? Because I'm terrible. I read a synopsis when I get a book, and then I put it down, and then I never reread it. So I go into books going, "What the is meant to be happening?"
See, for me, because it was an author that I've read from, like, I literally just finished the book and given it 5 stars, and then
Yeah.
I'd seen that this had come out,
Mm.
and I was just like, I don't need to read the synopsis. It's called A Study in Giant. I loved their first
Yeah.
book. I'll pick it up. So I had absolutely no idea going in. I do know that when I said to Meg, I wanted to see if the vibes were the same as Juniper and Thorn. She did say that it wasn't exactly the same. It was different, and you could tell because this one is very much centered around academia, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
she's and I get so angry at books when they do this, but I can understand why they do it as well. When it's like, you're just a female and you have no control over anything. Like, she just got put in the architecture college because she wasn't deemed like intelligent enough or intellectual enough, and
Yeah.
to handle the literature academies and stuff. I was like, oh my god, if those men had been around me, I would have. Oh god, but
But
when
at
you
the
think
same
like
time,
she's told that her whole life, ain't she? She's been told that her whole life
yeah.
that she's never gonna
But at
be
the
able to
same
do
time,
that.
I was just a bit confused as to why they. Because they went, you're not really smart enough to do the literature college, but go and design buildings.
I
What?
think I think it's the kind of like in their society, like the people who
Yeah.
study literature are at, like, oh, they're at the top tier, and you know what I mean. And she did mention about how people have come in and taken over, and there was
Mm.
like this like civil war between different sides, which obviously continually did get brought up throughout the book. And obviously
Yeah.
Preston was like a mixed
Argantian.
race. He was part
Yeah.
Argantian. And yeah, so when we met Effie, I did see her, and I think you're supposed to see her as like this meek and mild, like she just lets people walk all over her, but she's got
Mm.
this absolute like undying love for literature, and especially is it Midrin's
Mirrodin?
Mirrodin's
Mm.
writing.
Yeah.
And she's like got this battered up copy that she has under a pillow, and she absolutely
Mm.
loves this literature, and it's gotten her through some really horrible times that she's been through in her life,
Yeah.
and that automatically endears me to a character when they're introduced as like the underdog, but like I just wanted to protect her.
Mm.
I
See, this is
wanted
why I
to.
enjoy doing these things with you, because I wanted to hit her. At the start of the book, I was like, why am I here? What is going on? Why are you going to the one of the first big scenes is her going to the library and trying to get out the books on Miriam's life because he has passed away, and
Yeah,
they put up this notice in the library to say, oh well, we want architecture students to design a building, essentially.
yeah,
And she goes there and they don't have the books, and she sees the name and she's like, oh, it's an Argantian. And like, I get that bit because it's kind of like she's grown up with this kind of thought process her whole life. It's always
yeah,
been them and her country. Essentially, they've always
yeah.
been at war. So I got that. But the way that she was just like, oh, well, he's got all the books and I can't do it. And I was just like, dude, you know all of his lit, and she says it herself. She's like, I know all of his literature off by heart. And I'm like, well, we'll use that then. What do you need to know about his actual life? Like, and then immediately this other boy comes up. I did find it kind of infuriating how the whole time throughout the book, her, I don't know, beautifulness essentially is just like, essentially the whole book is men falling down on themselves to take advantage of her. And I
Yeah.
was like, can you just not learn how to hit him? Because if this is the ongoing thing, look, like, I was surprised that she would go to a all-male college and her
Yeah.
mum just didn't care. I was just like,
Oh
dude.
God, what is it like? Authors have a thing as well for absentee parents. I don't
Oh
like.
yeah,
There's so many
her
books
mum
I've
just
read where
likes
the
to drink
parents are just
gin.
yeah. And then when she called her, she was clearly upset. She's like,
Sort yourself
"Effie, you're
out.
bothering me." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, your
I forgot you
daughter
listened to
is."
the audiobook. I was like, where did that voice come from? And then you listened to the audiobook.
Yeah, it was like, oh, our mother's voice was just like, "Effie, you're bothering you. Stop! Were you crying?" And I'm like, "Oh my
Yeah,
God."
literally. You've got yourself into this. It's problem after problem after problem with you. And I was like, well, I'm not surprised that she's not come running to you with the fact that she's been, abused at college,
Yeah,
because you would turn it around and make it her fault.
yeah,
So I understood that part, but at the same time, I was just like, and at that point, so Effie annoyed me up until she
yeah,
got to the manor. Not
yeah,
surprised, really. But
yeah,
when she had that conversation with her mum, and her mum was like, well, sort it out yourself. You're always a problem. You're always a burden. Essentially, I just want to sit here and drink gin. I was like, okay, now I get why you're annoying, because no one's ever told you that you can stand up for yourself and you are capable. So
yeah.
now figure out that you're capable and just deal with it. And she
I
did
think
eventually.
I think sometimes I can be like the way that you are, but immediately when I see a character that's like totally down on themselves, and my automatic thing is like to go and protect them and be
Yeah.
like, you can
You're fluffier
be
than I am.
be more of a nurturing kind of. I'd be the one that would be
Yeah.
guiding and being like, you can do this. You'd be like, just get up and do it.
Sort
Come
yourself
on,
out.
come on.
Well, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I
I mean,
did
I'd
think she
say I'm
overacted
nicer
a little
than
bit.
I'm nicer than Effie's mum. I'm not like, you are a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
But yeah, I am a bit more like, you need to think for yourself. Come on, like,
yeah.
how can we
But I'd be
fix
pushing
this?
her like the nurturing. You'd be
She'd be
like
like pushing them
pulling her
up a
along.
hill. Like,
Yeah, you'd be pulling her from the top. Like,
don't
come on,
worry, if you
come on.
fall, I'll catch you.
I
That's
did
literally
think
it.
that I did think though that she did overreact a little bit to not having access to the books, but I think because for her they were a comfort reads, weren't they? So and she was going
So
through it, and obviously
she had the
she
fiction.
had her one. She had her one, yeah.
She just didn't have his life story. I'm like, but why does
Yeah,
that
and I think she thought that this architecture opportunity was her way of getting out of
matter?
so she I think because she'd put so much like thought into that, she's probably thinking
Yeah.
that she wouldn't be able to do a good job if she didn't know about his
Yeah.
life more. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
because she was
I get that. I mean,
she wanted to get picked, but that guy that came
and
up to her in the library, I don't know. I never understood that
is
scene
he
because he
your
didn't actually
friend?
do any. No, oh, bleh. He didn't
That's
actually
what you
do
said, and then
anything
he
to her.
scrawled all over her hand. Oh,
He didn't
my
actually do
doorbell is
anything
ringing.
to her.
I'm very sorry. I'll be 1 minute. My doorbell's
Hell,
ringing.
oh, is Jack not in?
No, he's not. 1 second. I'm so sorry.
Oh.
Oh, that's so annoying. That's hilarious. Ah, that
Was that
box, I think, is for one thing. I don't think it's very big. I fell
is it
over.
fragile? Because you've just thrown it on your floor.
No, there's pillows down here. It landed on the pillows. It's fine.
Okay.
I'm not going to show you the floor of this room. Well, that was fun. Sorry for that. That was next door
It's
dropping
okay.
off a parcel that I tried to get back.
Okay. So this guy that she met in the library, like,
Yeah.
I don't fully understand the interaction. I don't know. I think the story would have like played out the same and felt the same to me if this interaction hadn't have taken place. But I think
Yeah.
it does sort of highlight how creepy the guys in her life, like the men that she meets, has been, and how, like, I think it's supposed to highlight the fact that none of the men respect her as a woman and they just
Yeah.
glare at her. And I think that's the point that they were trying to get across when they were writing this character. But to me, I was just like, it was just really creepy. And I did,
Yeah.
and but yeah, that particular interaction, I didn't feel like it was needed in order to like further the story, further the plot.
Yeah. I don't I think for me I think that's why a lot of it kind of bugged me with the fact that boys kind of fall over themselves, and why I
Mm,
really liked Preston. Because
yeah,
that, like you said, that point wasn't necessary in my opinion to the story, but it does prove that she's very beautiful and boys want to take her out and boys want to take advantage. And I think that was the point that the author was trying to drill home, and they did drill it home, but at the same time, like, it did get a bit tedious
yeah.
after everyone.
See,
But
when it got to when she got to the manor and
yeah.
she'd been picked for the architecture thing, and obviously we've got this sort of, it's not a side plot really, it's like alongside her trying to prove herself, and
Mm,
like even though she hates architecture, this is the only thing that she can do to do
yeah.
anything with her life. It's either this or nothing.
Hmm.
We've got this thing where she's taking pink pills, that
Yeah.
like the and she'd been dreaming about like the faking, and
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
very much not sure throughout the whole of this book whether these things that she sees shadows, and like when I
Yeah.
can't
I
remember his
think she's
name
just
now,
a bit
that guy,
wackadoodle.
yeah, when that guy's driving, I keep forgetting his name, he's driving her back after he's taken her for a meal, which was really creepy to read
Oh,
about.
Ian, so
Yeah, I can't remember his name. I listened to the audiobook, but um
that's
what
why
is
I said
it?
it in my head. I said it wrong. It's Ianto, so I say Ianto or Ianto,
Oh,
because
that
Ian can be spelled Ian. So maybe it's Ianto.
him. He
Him.
him. When she kept like seeing flashes of the like faking, or
Yeah.
flashes of like something that wasn't him. I don't know
Mm.
whether that's because of the trauma that she's been through with the professor, or whether
Yeah.
it's or the mental illness. So the whole time I was reading it, I couldn't tell. I think this is supposed to be the way that you're thinking about it. Is that you can't tell whether it's just in her head or whether the
Yeah.
faking is actually real, because nobody believes that it's real. Even when Preston gets to
No.
know her and they get close and they start opening up to each other about everything, he still doesn't believe that the faking's real. Like, I believe that you believe, but I don't believe. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's very
Yeah.
that. And
I agree, and I mm, I think that was part of it as well when I first started the book, because it wasn't until like probably about page 100 maybe that I went, actually I want to know what happens. I was just a bit like, what are you on about? You're painted as this really meek girl and you see things, and but and I was just right, okay, so where are we going with this? And I was originally thinking as well about the fact is because she's suffered a lot of trauma, and it sounds like she's been through a lot more than even is let on. Obviously, it's mentioned further on in the book that when she's asked if she's a changeling child,
yeah,
she goes on and says like, well, I was very troublesome and my mother left me out for the fairy king to come and get. And Preston's like, no, she left you out in the cold to die. Like,
yeah,
that's really what happened. And she's like, no, 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 like the fairy king, he took my ring finger. And in her head, she's like, it's because he said I will never marry anyone else. But she doesn't say that bit out loud, because that really does
mm,
sound a little bit out of sorts.
yeah,
And then that's tied in towards the end. So I did like how it came back and tied in at the end. And I guess the Fairy King. I think this would have been a really good story. It was a really good story, anyways. But I think it would have been a completely fine, really good story, even if they hadn't had the Fairy King element in it, as in towards the end making it real. Even if they literally just came to the point of like, oh well, Ianto did everything he did, locked Preston in the basement and tried to murder him and all this stuff because he's a bit all over the place as well. But it comes to pass that actually she didn't see the Fairy King and it was just her coping mechanism. But once she overcame like this other man that's trying to force himself on her, she comes to realize, or she like finally believes in herself, that sort of thing. I did like how Ava Reid wrote it anyways. But now my question to you, because when they go through Preston and Effie, and he gets her on board, and he's like, right, we're going to write a paper, and if we prove that Mirrodin actually wrote these books, then I'll write a paper with you, blah, blah, blah. Did you have any inkling about who actually wrote Angharad, or however you say it?
No.
Because I guessed. And I'm usually stupid. But I guessed.
Right at the beginning, I had no clue. Like, obviously, when we first meet Preston, he's very closed off. He's very sort of like hiding his work, and he doesn't want to know. But then you kind of understand why he kept it from her, because she's very much Mirrodin fan, and he didn't want her to see what he was doing. So obviously, when she finds out, I do think though she came round to the idea very quickly. Although for her it was a case of she needs to find out the truth. She was still very easily like lured into this plan with him, and he was like, "I'm going to find out the truth." But I can kind of see from both sides. But initially, I had no idea whatsoever. I thought maybe it might have been the mother of the mother of the house that was never there. Like this absent mother that invited Preston apparently, but she's nowhere to be seen. She's not to be disturbed. I was like, who is this woman? Where is she? And why have we not seen her? Like, I just automatically thought that had been made up. That part was just made up. And then I was thinking, like, who invited Preston then if it wasn't her?
Yeah.
Or maybe, like, he'd actually killed his mum because he was a bit off, wasn't he? Like, So I thought maybe he's, like, done something to his mum, or he's hiding her away because there's something that she might let out to people if she's not allowed to speak to people. So I never trusted him as like the man. I never trusted him for the moment we met him. Like, I got creepy vibes, and like I was unsure of him at the beginning, but I know a no inkling that the fake king was real. I thought this was all going to be in her head, and that, like I said, like that faking like manifestation was her trying to deal with her trauma, or coping with the fact that her mum was abusive, or that kind of thing. I thought that was just like a coping mechanism, and I didn't expect it to be true. I'm not mad that it was. I think it does work well with the story, but as we got further on and it mentioned the girl, and then when I found letters under the bed, I still didn't clock on that it might be her. In hindsight, when I think about it, maybe I should have done, but I was just so engrossed in, like, it kind of turned into a bit of a mystery. It was kind of like a dark academia, but kind of like a mystery, like searching for the truth, but also slightly fantastical with like the faking element. So it was like,
well, once that bit was
just a lot.
introduced, the mystery element, that was when I was like, oh, I'm actually really interested because I like a good mystery.
But then obviously the guy that they went to see was acting really strange. I was like, well, has he written it, or is it? When I think about it, I should have thought that maybe, because they never spoke highly of women, any of them. So, and obviously this was about a girl that isn't thought highly of, that kind of thing, and how they're not good enough for literature. It should have twigged, really, I think, that it was a woman that wrote it, but it didn't twig to me until they were laying together, and she said the line.
Well, I
While
will
they
love
were,
you till we're a nation.
yeah, and I was like, oh shit, it's her. But that's when it got me. Is like when the characters realized. I
Yeah,
realized. I didn't realize before then. When did you figure it out?
quite early on. But I still enjoy. So the minute that Preston was like, I'm trying to figure out if Meriden really wrote this book, I was like, he didn't, did he? Like, I just you can't turn around and be like, actually, no, shit, sorry, I was wrong. He's fine. He's a brilliant author. Like that's terrible. I mean, I'm sure someone's done it and it's fantastic, but for this point, it wouldn't have worked. So I was like, right, okay, so who else could have written it? Well, Ianto couldn't have because he's a kid, so he wasn't even a thought when this was written. And they were reading through the diary and they were like, oh, he dropped Angahard even off at midnight, and I was like, that's got to be a person. That's gotta be it. Like you don't just like drop a book off like that's weird, too weird. And then they kept going, and I was like, well, the mother's got to have written it. Like I was the whole time they were faffing around, going, we need to go and talk to Black Ma. We need to go and find this. What I was like, why don't you just go and knock on the mother's door? Like knock on that door and be like, you invited me. What's the crack? What is it? But they don't. And
they're gonna put themselves in danger.
I did have a bit of an issue with how she appears at the end, because to begin with, I was like, where are these extra hands coming from, you weirdos? And then I was like, oh, well, she's seen a ghost. Maybe it's a ghost. Maybe we're going down the paranormal element as well. And then she actually sits there and like leads them to places and stuff. And I was like, well, no, you're old. And then I went, oh, but you're actually not that old once you've explained your story, because she was 18 when her and Mirrodin had their thing and he was 32. So that's a fair few years, you know? So if he died at 70, I can't remember how old he was when he died, but she'd be like almost 20 years younger than him anyways. So she ain't going to be, unless she got poorly, not really near the end of her lifespan. So it did make sense that she was still fit, but I was like, but if you're alive and kicking and you're able to come out here to save them from the basement that's trying to drown them, why didn't you come out at any other point? Why were you just in that room? How did you eat? Like, I just didn't get it. And especially since she wrote to Preston and invited him, I was like, wouldn't you find a way to get another letter to him, to do anything else?
Yeah.
Rather than be like, come here, see my house. Oh, I've disappeared. Like,
figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. But I did like that they found the box. That kind of revealed that she was the author and stuff. And yeah, spoiler alert, like Meriden didn't bloody write the book, shock horror. But I did like the theme of one of the most treasured works in the world was actually written by a woman. And I liked that turn. I liked that thought process, because the book is all about kind of like female empowerment and and feeling better about yourself and coming to terms with like you are your own person. And I really enjoyed those themes. I thought they were really well done. There were just certain elements of it that I was just like, that's why it got 4 and not 5, because there were certain things like the whole backstory of finding out about Angahard and them finding the letters that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
They were really sick at times, but also I have to remember that they're children. Like, how did they not think that by going to see Blackmar that he wouldn't call Ianto, who he's been taking the royalties from for his whole life? Like, of course he's gonna probably, I mean, he wasn't all there anyways, but you know, it made
mental
sense.
illness seems to be like a thing throughout this whole book.
But also just the fact, I didn't appreciate either that every bloke in this book, apart from Preston and kind of Witherall, although I don't really understand because he wasn't there for a lot of it, the guy that like controls the estate, is
Yeah.
bad and wrong. And
Yeah.
every man in this book wanted to use Effie in their own way. And
Yeah.
I was just like, I understand. I know it happens. I know the world is not a fluffy rainbow place, but those aren't necessarily the percentages either. Like, every man you will ever come across will want to take advantage of you. But
Yeah.
I suppose that was also done because then we kind of like Preston more because he is the only one that doesn't, and he's the only
Yeah.
one that when she actually wants him to, do things to her, that he goes, no, I kind of know about you and the rumors, and are you
Yeah.
sure? And I get
Yeah.
it, like
But
he
he
is
takes her
painted in that
feelings
knight
into
in shining
yeah.
armor.
He takes her feelings into consideration, and he's supposed to be seen as like not like the others in there, but
Yeah.
is yeah. I do like their relationship and how it was built. I don't feel
Hmm.
like somebody mentioned I can't remember I read a review that somebody mentioned it was like enemies to lovers. I don't think it was that because he didn't see her as an enemy beforehand. It was just like very like just like he didn't know her.
Standoffish.
Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think it's more of a dislike on her part to sort of reluctant friends, like to
Yeah.
then to lovers, and I think that kind of
Yeah.
works for the story. Um, I'm a sucker for a happy ending, so it is what it is. But I
Well,
didn't.
even as someone who doesn't like romance, I didn't actually mind the romance in here. I didn't
Yeah.
think the hooking up scene necessarily needed to happen, as it's a YA book,
Mm, yeah.
but sure. I think. I suppose it was more of a fact of like Effie taking back her power, essentially, is
Yeah.
a way to read into it,
And
I
it was with
guess.
consent, wasn't it? Whereas the first time anyone had touched it wasn't with her
Well,
consent.
exactly.
So I think it's showing that like she can have a relationship where consent is involved.
Mm.
But one character that I'm really unsure about whether we should totally hate is Ianto because you could tell, and especially when his mum sort of explains that there were times where he was trying to
Yeah.
fight the faking's influence on him. He was
Mhm.
trying not to be that leechy, creepy character. Um,
Yeah.
because of like the he was trying to fight the fake king's influence, and it was a fake king that wanted her for himself
Mhm.
because he took her finger all those years ago. And like once you've been given up to me, you can't no takes your backsies. It was kind of
Yeah.
like that when it was like
Yeah.
you can't give me this and then take it back. I'm not allowing you to
Yeah.
take your gift back.
And you've used all of your powers to hide yourself from me, and she's like, "Oh, I have been taking my pink pills." I was like, "Really?" Like, if you put that into any other scenario, really, in the grand scheme of things, as in Akamath or Akhtar, House of Earth and Blood, Holly Black writing, do you really think pink pills would hide anyone from like Reese or Tamlin or Carden or anyone? No.
I think yeah, I can understand how it can maybe that either way, I think it would have been a good book. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, but I think I would probably still would have enjoyed it as much if it had have turned out that the big bad faking was actually just her self doubt,
Yeah.
demons, trauma manifested
Hmm.
itself as this evil being,
Yeah.
because she refused to come to terms with the fact that her mum genuinely didn't give a shit about her and actually left her for dead, not left her
Hmm.
for the faking. So because it's what kids tend to do in it. Like they'll make things up in their head like to deal with trauma. That's something that you read a lot in
Yeah.
books. Is like they make up
Yeah.
worlds and personalities and friends because
Yeah.
of trauma. So in my because I think maybe I got into this because I knew how they wrote in the previous book.
Hmm.
I was kind of thinking it was more along the mental health side of things. Um,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
I'm
hasn't she written something else as well? Yeah.
um
The Wolf and the Woodsman, which I've got on my shelf.
Oh, I haven't read that one
Um,
yet.
I haven't
Maybe I
read
should
that
have
one
read in
either.
chronological order. Becca will kill me. because I've read the 2 recent books, Juniper and Thorn and this, and I haven't read A Wolf and the Woodsman. Oops.
I don't know when The Wolf and the Woodsman came out. I got it in a book box, so I reckon
It came out a
maybe
while ago, well before Juniper and Thorn and this book.
I'm gonna have to check that now.
But
Nosy.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, overall, because I don't know, more than happy to go into like a complete in-depth play-by-play of this book. But I also know that we don't necessarily need to tear everything apart. If you get what I mean.
I think sometimes it's good to go in. I think, but good to go in depth. But I think other times it's, for me, I can't say it was a fun read because it's not fun reading about trauma. But
No.
it's one of those reads that like for me, because it does also sit on the slightly fantastical side. It
Yeah.
is an easier read for me than it is reading like a contemporary with that kind of trauma, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because in a contemporary, for me, it's more obviously trauma is trauma and trauma is hard hitting, but in fantasy, it's especially when it's this kind of fantasy where you're talking about trauma and being essentially stalked. You're not really being stalked by a real person, you're being stalked by the Fairy King.
Yeah.
It's not a case of, oh, well, when I walk down the street and someone stood behind me, I'm going to think that they're following me, because it's not put in a real life situation, and it's not put necessarily in a real life situation that everyone has experienced. I feel like when people go into trauma in contemporary books, because it is realistic and it's set in our world and most likely like our time period, and a lot of the characters that are written are probably around our age or not far off it, or also quite close to an age where we may have experienced something similar, it kind of just dredges that stuff up, which I think is the difference. Because at least with fantasy, you can go, oh, well, there's a dragon in the background, so that's never happened to me. You know, like you can kind of disassociate from it and separate it. Whereas when it's based in the real world, it's a bit more triggering, I would say.
Yeah,
I think anyway.
Reading these kinds of books have made me realize though that I used to put myself in boxes, and I think I talked to my friends about this. I used to put myself in boxes, like I was just, I was, oh, I'm just a fantasy girl, but fantasy can be many different things, and I used to just think of myself as like all about the dragons and the witches and the crazy magical systems and stuff. But the more that I've started to like pick up recommendations from other friends, I've realized that there are other types of books out there like Dark Academia with little fantastical elements that I can still enjoy, which I would never have picked this book up a year ago.
Yeah.
I would have seen that it had no dragons and witches and magical creatures, and I'd been like, nah. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, when I started this channel, it was a case of, oh well, I used to always say if it hasn't got a dragon or a spaceship in it, I'm not interested. And that's obviously quite a broad stroke statement, and I still kind of stand by it, if I'm honest. Like, my favorite books still involve dragons and spaceships, but at the same time, fantasy, sci-fi has many different subgenres as well, but personally I don't delve into them as much as I do with the fantasy side of things. With fantasy, I do delve into like the contemporary side and the dark academia side and all those little things that you kind of have a sprinkling of fantasy that apparently are fantasy, but the only reason they're fantasy is because they're kind of set in medieval England and they're a little bit like, oh, there might be a mage, but that's about it. That's it. But it's not like a whole in-depth magic system like Brandon Sanderson where you eat metal and stuff or anything else. And I feel like it's like you said, now I'm in this community and I'm kind of trying to tune out all of the hype and finding other creators and authors who are plugging books that are less hyped. I feel like I have a better and broader experience in the genres, because if I just stuck to what was hyped, it wouldn't be as broad. Because the same things get hyped. Because understandably, like once you're a big author, your books get hyped and obviously sold out in multiple special editions. R.F. Kuang and Brandon Sanderson for normal traditional authors. Ryan Carhill now for indie.
Yeah.
And Ryan Carhill is traditional epic in my opinion because he has got dragons and it's a boy and his dragon story.
And when you think of
I love it.
fantasy, people when you think of fantasy, when I used to think of fantasy, that's immediately what my mind goes to. So I wouldn't say this was. I think this is like a blend of genres, and I'm finding that more with books as well. A lot of books are being released by newer authors. I've said newer authors; they're not that new, but the the more of a blend. So it's slightly gothic with a bit of a mystery element, a bit of a fantastical element, but it also has like some like darker themes of like trauma and things. There's more of a blend of different.
Because I think now there's more emphasis put on mixed genres sell. You don't have to be just an epic fantasy author. You don't have to be a general sci-fi or romance or whatever. Romantasy, as we see in the Goodreads.
Don't say romantasy. I hear that word.
No, I know I do. I don't read it, but like that on Goodreads, the awards for this year, there's a romantasy section. Like that wasn't there a year, 2 years ago at all. It was kind of just all blended in, and now it's actually kind of got big enough that it's become its own thing.
Which I don't mind when calling it fantasy. I call it fantasy romance. I hate the word romantasy. Like fantasy romance is another genre that I've started to read more of. I'm not like I'm just slightly dipped my toes into that kind of area,
no, I
but I think
anywhere I can.
I think a lot of it stems from is like there's just so many things out there.
Yeah, I'm never gonna read everything.
It's hard to get with everything, but I am glad that we picked this up, but I am going to be picking up more of Ava Reed's work, and I probably will go back and read The Wolf and the Woodsman, because I've given 2 of their books 5 stars so far. So
that came out in 21. I googled it, so that was 21. Juniper was 22. This was 23.
Yeah, so it's not that much of a break between them. So I'm guessing as it's a debut, I'm gonna give them a little bit of a leeway with regards to like writing style and stuff. But yeah, overall, I really enjoy the characters. The plot for me, it was a very easy read. I think I read it in one sitting. I just sat there listening to the audiobook, trying to learn how to crochet.
I think I did 3. Once I hit the 100-page mark and the element of mystery was added in, I wanted to read it more. I was a bit worried originally before that whole, because it does say in the blurb that Preston is looking to kind of prove that her favorite author isn't really the one who wrote the book.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, okay, but how are you going to do that? And the way they did it, I really enjoyed. So once mystery was added in, I wasn't worried anymore. I was like, well, at least it's going to be a 3, because at the start of the book, I was like, it's going to be a 2 or less, because I was like, it's not gripping me. What are you on about the Fairy King for? What is this? And it had things that I don't particularly enjoy, but then obviously sticking with it, it became a book I did really enjoy and I would happily recommend. But I think because we read it for I've got a copy, obviously I got it from a Lumacrate, so I had plans to read it at some point, but I wouldn't have picked it up this quickly if it wasn't for you, because I only got it, I think it was the October book.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
So I would never have read it within a month of getting it if it wasn't for this.
I am glad I can be of some use. But
yeah, you also add to my TBR, which isn't helpful.
But next year we have. I don't think I've kept them. So we're taking a break in December.
Yes,
taking a break, but then
Merry Christmas.
Next year we are started with some beastie ones.
Rob J, please.
And I am nervous of jumping into his books because he has so many books, and I'm nervous because I want to really like his work, and I've heard nothing but great things about everything he's written. But on the other side, on the other hand, I'm like, he's got so many books in my bank account. He's not gonna like me if I enjoy all his writing.
The plus side is that I think the whole of the first series that we're reading is on KU.
Yes, and it's also available. I'll probably read it on audio. Not gonna lie, but for January
but
to
if
March,
you don't spend money on like audio credits, or you only get one a month like me, well, to be fair, I've had mine paused for the past however many months, because I wasn't listening to anything. But if you're like me, and even though, to be fair, KU isn't as cheap as it used to be, it's like £10 now. Which is ridiculous. I get it, but it's also bonkers. But anyways, if you would rather spend £10 a month and read as many KUs as you can, which will probably be better than what I currently do with KUs, then that might be the way forward. And that's how I'm going to read this. Honestly, this series is the reason I am not cancelling my Kindle Unlimited subscription, because I would rather pay £10 a month for 3 months and read these books than try and either save up credits for Audible or actually buy them physically, because I'm running out of space.
I'm just having a look to see what we've got. So for the January to March, we've got the Ties That Bind.
Yep.
Is that what it's called? Yeah, the Ties That Bind. And then April to July, we have the behemoth that is Ken Liu with
It's it. You can see it.
the Dandelion Dynasty. I'm gonna be getting the paperbacks of them, but I'm so glad that the paperbacks still have those beautiful covers. Because it's the covers that, I mean, obviously I would love the sprayed edged ones, but the covers are just absolutely stunning. So yeah,
although the Broken Binding have said that they are currently in talks with the publisher about printing the midnight editions, which I think are the all black covers, but they're waiting on a cost, and I can tell you now, it ain't gonna be cheap.
No.
That'll be great.
They will, but I like these versions, so I'm probably just gonna have to put up with the paperbacks at this point. And then the final series we'll be doing is Bengali and the Chasing Graves. I'm nervous, but those covers scare me. Those covers look like seriously dark.
But they're not big books.
No, they're not. It's more like the content that I'm worried about, because I've never read any of his books, and just
no, I haven't either.
I don't like judging a book by its cover, but those covers look dark. I mean, I don't mind a dark book, but I feel like they might be a bit gritty. So I'm kind of excited but nervous.
Yeah. To begin with the first cover, I was a bit convinced originally that it was sci-fi, but it's not. It's just epic fantasy.
Yeah, same. I was surprised.
Because he kind of looks like a messed up version of Cyborg out of Teen Titans. That's why.
Yes. But
so we're conquering 3 series next year.
I'm excited.
2 trilogies and what with 4. I don't really know what the thing is for 4 books. Quadruple book series. I don't know.
A quadrilogy? Is it the 5 books of the series? Is it bringing another one out, or is the 4th the final one?
It's right. 4th. Okay. Are you on like Ken Liu?
Yeah.
It's Grace of Kings, The Wall of Storms, Speaking Bones, and The Veiled Throne. It's 4.
Right. Okay. That's fine. Oh my god, that's fine. Yeah. So we will be. 1 second.
Oh no.
We will be joined. We'll be back in January at some point. With the live show of of the first Rob J. Hayes. It's called The Heresy Within, if you're interested, because it took me a while to work out like
which one the first one is.
Yeah.
I agree.
So it goes The Heresy Within, The Colour of Vengeance, The Price of Faith. And they all look quite dark as well, so that's gonna be interesting.
It's gonna be great.
So yeah, thank you to anyone who watches this back, who will join us, and we'll see you in the new year when we'll be
Have a lovely festive
talking
season
more
if you
content.
celebrate, and if you don't, I hope you still get to eat all the good food.
Yes, same. See you all in the new year.
Bye.
Bye.